This is episode number 151 of the Cozy Corner of Cinema, being recorded on Thursday, February 20th, 2025 at 9:35 p.m. I am sitting on the floor. The setup right now is just non-existent. It's a long story. I am currently recording this on the floor, crisscrossed. It is cold outside. There is ice out, so that's why we're staying inside. The perfect opportunity to stay inside is now. My house is on fire. Get the hell out of there. Anyways, man, I hope you all are doing well. The year is fast approaching us. You're going to start to hear many people say, oh, this year's flying by. This year's flying by. I haven't even done anything this year. And hopefully you're going to be able to say that you can't relate, that you've been focused and determined on whatever it is you're trying to get done. Maybe you're trying to learn that new language, or you're trying to, write that screenplay, or work on that novel, or whatever it is, man. Just staying focused, not succumbing to pointless kind of socialization that doesn't get you anywhere. Unless that's what you want to do, then God bless you. That's your life. Um, but boy, oh boy, just stay on the track, stay focused, and So when people are talking about, oh, this year's flying by, oh my gosh, this and that, you can say, oh, I don't know, man, I've been busy this whole time. Dude at work asked me, hey, how was your weekend? I had a long weekend, and I said, oh, it was good. It's general kind of small talk. But you go, it was a very productive weekend, got a lot done. They're like, well, you got a lot done, you got a lot of work done. Like, you better believe I got a lot of work done. They're like, wow, man, and it's like crazy. People can't even believe that, weekends aren't just for sitting around and staring at the wall, that's not what I'm all about, man. Weekends are just a wonderful opportunity to really kind of hone in the human experience and really kind of stay committed and stay focused on the dream and on the goals, man. Anyways, man, a lot watched lately. There's so many films to talk about. There's always so many films to talk about. In the middle of a book right now that I'm not going to talk about just yet, but I'll talk about it soon enough when I have a bit more of it behind me. But let's talk about Mark Duplass. Talk about Jay Duplass. Talk about their directorial debut. Well, actually, this is Jay Duplass's directorial debut, The Puffy Chair from 2005. Now, Mark Duplass has made a name for himself. I guess, I'm sorry, they both directed it according to IMDb, but the Duplass brothers made a name for themselves. They've made a lot of films, a lot of comedies. Horror fans would know Mark Duplass from the Creep movies. I think there was just a new one that just came out. It was called The Creep Tapes or something like that. I don't remember. Yeah. Okay, so TV series, The Creep Tapes, because they made two films. Creep 1 and Creep 2, and it's a Shudder original series. It explores a collection. Ah, that makes sense. Interesting. Okay. Anyway, so the Duplass brothers, they came out with this film, The Puffy Chair, 2005. Um, Sort of one of the seminal kind of mumblecore films, one of the films that are always talked about in conversation from this era, alongside films such as Funny Ha Ha and Mutual Appreciation. Hannah Takes the Stairs. A lot of actors, a lot of filmmakers who would end up being in each other's films, or down the line, or at the same time. You'd have like Andrew Bujalski, who's making his own films and is popping up in stuff like Hannah Takes the Stairs, and then you have Greta Gerwig in a bunch of these films, and then she does, she's doing her own thing, and now, so Mark Duplass, and Mark Duplass is also in Hannah Takes the Stairs as well. That's directed by Joe Swanberg, who has directed a number of films, including Drinking Buddies, Nights and Weekends, that Christmas one with Anna Kendrick that I'm blanking on the name of right now, and I'm not going to look it up because I haven't seen it, and it's not relevant to the conversation, so I'm going to stop talking about it. But this film, The Puffy Chair, we have Mark Duplass playing this character, Josh. He's with his wife, his real life wife, Katie Asselton, playing the character of Emily. And it's, they're talking about, Josh wants to get his dad this lazy boy chair, just like the one that he used to have. So they're going to make a road trip out of it. Originally, he's just going to go on his own and meet up with his friend Rhett, played by Rhett Wilkins. But through some events, Emily joins along the way. Joins, from the beginning, and there we have a comedy drama. And I think that's what one of the things that Mark and J. Duplass do so well is they're able to really balance the tones. I'm going to be kind of jumping a little bit through their filmography here and there, so I may not be completely focused on this. If anyone's listened to the show long enough, I'm not exactly always focused on one type of film. And I also see that this shelf that I put up is slightly angled. Oh no, that's gonna be a bother. Well, that'll be fixed in due time. Anyways, okay. So one of the things I think that really stands out about this film is that it's a film that's not laugh out loud funny, but it is very comedic. But the drama in it as well feels very sincere. A lot of these Mumblecore films were focusing a lot on troubled relationships or characters who were selfish or going through a certain point in their life that is of worth noting. No matter how big or how small. And the stuff, I think, perhaps because now I don't know at this point if Mark Duplass and Katie Aselton were married or not. I didn't do any research on that, but their back and forth feels very genuine. It feels like they have very natural chemistry with one another. All three of them really do. Rhett Wilkins as well, who plays the character Rhett. Who is kind of doing his own thing. I mean, he's sort of this. I don't know if he was like a stoner. I don't remember if he was like a stoner kind of character or not. But he was, was really kind of like a hippie sort of dude. He really is very mellow, very chill. There's a real great bit where they're at a motel and Josh doesn't want to spend the extra $10 to get a room for both of them. And I won't give away how that scene plays out, but it's very comedic. And I think what Mark Duplass does really well, like I said before, is that it feels very natural in a lot of the tonal shifts in a way. And it's interesting with a film like this how you're not limited to a traditional kind of narrative structure, where you can still have the points that would go through something more traditional. But even the way the film ends, a lot of these films end very abrupt, and it's very much that even if it's not the end of the story, it's the end of this point right now. If that makes sense, it's not whatever happens to these characters after the fact is ultimately irrelevant because at the end of this point here these characters have gone through a change and where they end up is just all you're going to need to see. You don't need to see what's going to happen to them in 5, 6, 7 years from now. And it all works very well, man. I mean, the ending, the film ends on a kind of dramatic note that feels very sincere, feels very honest in a way that I think we kind of take for granted for. It's very easy to kind of say, like, oh, you can have realistic sounding dialogue or realistic characters and all that. But when you're actually putting, pen to paper and you're putting it on screen, it's sort of like, man, is this going to come out natural or not? I mean, there's been plenty of films I watch where they're trying to go for a natural kind of feeling, and boy, it just feels scripted. It just doesn't really like work. And you can say that whether or not it's better to have it completely scripted or have it improvised. And I think sometimes it works better than others. I think Cassavetes is somebody, John Cassavetes, that is, who I think people kind of mistakenly put him as a director who is really into like improv and stuff. And I'm not a Cassavetes like expert or anything like that, but to my knowledge, from what I've heard is that his films were very much scripted. I mean, he's so good at balancing characters talking over each other and characters conversing with one another in a way that feels very natural. And I've said before, I'm not even the biggest Cassavetes fan, but even I can tell you that you watch his films and they feel so honest, so natural, so real. And that's not to say I'm not like a fan of his films. Of course, he's made films like Woman Under the Influence, Opening Night, that I think are very well done. I think are very good. But some of his other bigger films aren't really particularly. I'm not particularly a fan of. But he is such a talented and wonderful filmmaker that he will forever be in the conversation of just these great independent filmmakers. Let me get a sip of this beverage right here. Actually, I'm keeping an eye on the microphone, man, because I've been having some trouble with this one lately. And I think it's just the setting that's making it sound a lot quieter. So I got to make sure that I'm not yelling into the thing, but it's also not like pipsqueak quiet, man. It'd be ridiculous. Um, but anyway, so I mean, with this man, you get just a solid road trip movie. It's a film where it's not about the plot. You really are just with these characters. I mean, halfway through, they basically get to the point where they need to, at least for the central kind of core of the film, and then the rest of the film is waiting for that next point, and these characters going through changes, and then touching on marriage and commitment and the relationships to one another. Which, if you're into these kinds of films, then well, the thing is that if you're not into these kinds of films, it's tricky to recommend because I think a lot of the criticisms that are probably lobbied at these types of films is valid. you're either on board with it or not. And if you're not on board with it, it can definitely seem very meandering. There was a film that I had watched the other night that it was a film of this sort that I just really couldn't get with. I just thought it just didn't know. It just felt like it was all over the place. It was trying to balance all these different tones, but none of them worked. But so but that was one film that I was just like, man, that just doesn't work for me. And even some of the other stuff, even some stuff that I do, I watched Nights and Weekends recently, directed by Joe Swanberg and Greta Gerwig. And I had the mixed feelings on it. There were some parts I thought were done very well, and there were some parts where I'm like, man, this is really kind of falling into the territory where a lot of the criticisms that are lobbied at these films is really kind of coming through here to me. This feels just really, I don't want to just put that film on blast because I do actually like that film. I didn't think it is a good film to watch in context, but boy, oh boy, there were just some times where I'm like, man, this is just not working for me. But Puffy Chair is a solid film, man. I think Mark Duplass is a really talented actor, filmmaker, and Jay Duplass as well, who's done a lot of the projects with him as well. He produced a lot of this stuff and writes a lot of the stuff, co-directs a lot of the stuff. And Mark Duplass been in other films like I like that film he did with Elizabeth Moss, the one I love, is really well done. I really like that film. Who directed that one? I gotta actually look that up because that's one that it's funny to kind of see a lot of these actors who would being in more of these independent kind of dramas and comedies, but over time them kind of following more of a structure. You can look at even someone like Andrew Bujalski or I've been saying his name wrong the whole time, who starts off with these really kind of low key, quiet, films like Funny Ha Ha, and then something more recent, like Support the Girls, which has that natural direction, but feels more close to a traditional kind of narrative, a traditional kind of structure. And that's not a complaint at all, because I think that he's such a talented writer and director that he's able to blend that where the films aren't meandering. They follow more of a traditional kind of film, but they're so well done. I don't think I've talked about his film Results on the show with Guy Pearce, Colby Smulders, and Kevin Corrigan. But that's a film that I saw it months and months ago, and it's one that I just keep thinking about. I think it's just so well done. And it's just one of my favorite things I watched last year. I just really, really love that film. And I should also say the one I love is directed by Charlie McDowell, who also directed Windfall, which I saw, The Discovery, which I didn't see. Okay, so this was his directorial debut. Okay, interesting. He did some TV. He has a new film called The Summer Book, which I am. Maybe I didn't see this. I think I saw the poster of this at some point. I don't remember. But either way, but yeah, I mean, with the Duplass brothers, Cyrus, I think is a good film. Jeff, Who Lives at Home, I have a strange kind of affection for. It was one of these films I've just seen a couple of times now. Because these are short films too, which is very easy to recommend. That I mean, these are running in at 70 to 85 minutes max. You're not going to find a whole lot of these that are 90 plus minutes. And if you are, it better be a damn good film, man, because I mean, a lot of these, they're in, they're out. You got to get the point, and you're able to kind of just sit with these people, sit with these characters, and then kind of get out of there, man. So it's very easy to kind of like go through a lot of these and have sort of a mini film festival of your own of just like, hey, I want to watch a couple of Duplass Brothers films. Or I want to watch some of the Andrew Bujalski films, or Aaron Katz, or any of these other kind of filmmakers. So the Puppet Chair, I really like this film a lot. It's I think even if you're not into the mumblecore kind of stuff, I think if you're somebody who maybe you're not a fan of something like Funny Ha Ha or Mutual Appreciation, I think even as long as you're able to get with the literal kind of low key aesthetic of just consumer grade camcorders and some of the audio not being the best, you're still getting a really solid kind of character comedy drama that really just worked well for me. I really like this film a lot, and it's funny. And when I'm talking about some of these films I've been watching, because I've been in the middle of writing the screenplay, so I've been watching some of these films for part inspiration, part curiosity, because a lot of these I hadn't seen. Where a lot of it I had seen, I've been such a fan of, like I mentioned before, like Aaron Katz. I got Quiet City, or I'm sorry, Dance Party USA and Quiet City, and one of the films Cold Weather, which I'd love to see a blurry of at some point. Um, And so a lot of these things have been going through, and some are stronger than others. Of course, you gotta kind of weigh your options with a lot of these. And it's interesting, kind of the way that some of these get kind of grouped in. When I think of these mumblecore kinds of films, I think of like Funny Ha Ha, The Puffy Chair, Hannah Takes the Stairs. So it's interesting, kind of a lot of these lists. I was looking at some more recent. I mean, it's weird to say recent because it's not recent. I'm thinking about like I recently watched Tiny Furniture from 2010, written and directed by Lena Dunham, which is kind of categorized into that, and it is that a little bit. I mean, it's this character in that film. I'll pull this one up. We'll talk about this one briefly. This character in that film, played by Lena Dunham, who what's her character's name? I gotta find the name right here. Aura. Aura? Yeah, Aura. And she is a college grad. She's coming back home. Her ma is a famous kind of she's a respected kind of photographer of this of like tiny furniture and of these shoes and stuff. And it's her trying to figure out kind of what to do with her life. That sort of feeling of post college life where you don't really know what you're doing. You're kind of meeting these random sort of people. Maybe you're hooking up with them or whatnot. And this was kind of grouped into it as well. And I guess it is that to an extent. But I feel like a film like this kind of follows a more I don't even want to say more traditional narrative because it's not exactly that case. Because I think even where the film ends, it's not as if the story itself really kind of wrapped up. It's really just kind of like, all right, well, this character's going this way, and now this character's going to go this way. But I guess it's a different kind, a different sort of evolution of the genre, if you will. It's an interesting film. I actually, there's a lot of it that I liked, a lot of it that I wasn't so crazy about. I think it kind of middle of the road for me, but a good film nonetheless. I think, you know what am I trying to say here? It's good. It's a good film. And then another one that I think is more popular, or I'd say more well known, more seen, is Noah Baumbach's film Frances Ha from 2012, also co-written by Greta Gerwig, who stars in the film as well. And it's interesting people talking about Lady Bird being her directorial debut, and they forget that she had co-directed Nights and Weekends with Joe Swanberg. But Lady Bird was a critically acclaimed film. And it's a solid film. It's a quality film. So it's interesting to kind of see that evolution of her being in a lot of these sorts of films. And then now, she's known as much of a filmmaker as she is an actress. Directing the Little Women and recently Barbie. And I think I heard she was directing like the Narnia movie or so, the Chronicles of Narnia. I don't know how true that is. So it's interesting. She's a talented filmmaker. Even though I said I wasn't crazy about Barbie, but there's a lot of really good things in it. Lady Bird, I think, is really good. Little Woman, I haven't seen. Not that I didn't want to. It's just one of these. It wasn't a priority for me at the time. It really kind of still isn't, but I'm not particularly interested in another version of Little Women. But she's a talented filmmaker. But anyways, yeah, Frances Ha kind of gets grouped into that too, and I think it kind of is so more than maybe Tiny Furniture as well. This feels a lot more. I don't mean this in a negative way, but it feels a lot more meandering. It feels a lot more of this character. Kind of the same situation as Lena Dunham's character. Not exactly the same, but she's both of them are living in New York, and Frances kind of is. She's in a complicated situation where she was going to move in with her boyfriend. The boyfriend wanted her to move in, but she didn't want to leave her friend behind. Her friend's like, I'm actually moving with this other guy, so it's sort of like, what do I do? You're living in New York. You can't afford the rent. A lot of actors who have shown up in other kinds of films. Who's that actor who's popped up in a bunch? Is it? I think it's this fellow here, Michael Zegan or Zegan, Zegen. I believe he's popped up in a lot of these kinds of films. And actually, Adam Driver's in the film as well, coincidentally enough, who was on the show Girls, which was also done by Lena Dunham. So it's all kind of like a New York sort of circle and all that. Friends is a good film. I think later Noah Baumbach I don't find as interesting. I think he kind of, I don't mean to sound like, oh, your earlier work is better. Because I was thinking about that Woody Allen film. Oh, your earlier films are a lot funnier. But I'm just not as interested in his work now. I enjoy his films. I still see his films. But it's sort of like I think I have such an affliction, such an affection for Kicking and Screaming and Mr. Jealousy. I think those are just two wonderful films. And even like Squid and the Whale, I like. Next, and actually, Greenberg, I think is actually very good. So I'm gonna kind of go back more a little bit. Greenberg is very good, but that is kind of the exception. Francis Ha, I like. I like enough. While we're young is okay. I didn't see Mrs. America. The Meyerowitz stories was pretty good. I wasn't crazy on Marriage Story. I think it's a little bit melodramatic. And then White Noise, I really wasn't. I don't know. I wasn't really crazy about. Um, but interesting filmmaker nonetheless. And I always like to see what he does, man. And I've gone completely off topic here. I meant to kind of briefly mention these two films, and here I am kind of giving a whole point to them. But one filmmaker I do want to talk about, who I think is Mumblecore kind of adjacent, but distinctly is his own thing, is I think probably my favorite filmmaker out of the bunch, which is Bob Byington, who I'm such a fan of his work. He's one of these filmmakers who I was completely unaware of how much of a fan I actually was of his work, because I had seen his film from 2012. Somebody Up There Likes Me. I saw that probably back in 2012, 2013. And then a couple years ago, I saw Francis Ferguson, and then he has a new film that just came out. Well, it says 2023, but I don't think it was released till this year. Lousy, or I should say 2024. Lousy Carter, starring David Krumholtz, who was just in Oppenheimer. And actually, I didn't completely forgot that he was in Harold and Kumar. He is the neighbor, one of the neighbors, the one of the two stoner neighbors. I was watching an interview with him, and he was talking about being in Harold and Kumar. And I was like, "Well, who was in Harold and Kumar?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it's him! That's insane! It's wild! These things happen overnight." But and then speaking with Lousy Carter, man, you got Angel Bujalski's in that film as well. So there you go, man. It's like one big circle. But Bob Byington is just such an excellent filmmaker. He's one of these guys who. His comedy is so dry and it's so characters are replying to these very serious situations with generally kind of apathy and annoyance, which I find so funny. He's done. I think I've seen maybe probably all of his films now, at least all of his features, not counting his first two. Because it's interesting. He directed two films. Directed Shameless from 1993 and then Olympia in 1998. And then I was reading an interview with him where he took I think like a 7 year hiatus or something like that, like a self-imposed hiatus to write this short story where he talked about how he wrote one word every week, and he actually ended up winning the contest. And he says he thinks it's mostly because it was a shorter story, so they probably didn't want to read as much. But then he comes back in 2008 with RSO, Registered Sex Offender. Then 2009 is Harmony and Me. He does one of the segments for Slacker 2011, which I haven't seen. And actually, funnily enough, speaking of Slacker, Richard Linklater is in Registered Sex Offender. I believe that was the one. Then he does Somebody Up There Likes Me in 2012, Seven Chinese Brothers in 2015, which I still don't get that title in the context of that film. Infinity Baby from 2017, Francis Ferguson in 2019, and Lousy Carter in 2023. All of these films I like. I really am a fan of his work. Especially, I think, I don't want to choose favorites or anything like that, but I think Somebody Up There Likes Me and Seven Chinese Brothers are his two strongest films, unquestionably. Um, those are the two I think I responded the most to. Somebody Up There Likes Me, I recently rewatched, and I think just something about just the framing of it all, the way the characters interact, is just so funny in that. It's not one where I'm constantly laughing out loud, but it is just so dry and so funny. Nick Offerman's in the film, who was actually in a lot of these films at the time, and just some of his responses are great. He's got this really great kind of deadpan, sort of dry response to a lot of things, his annoyance with people. There's one great part where he's asking a character how old they are, and there's a pause, and he says something like, "Surely you don't have to think about this." Keith Polson, who's in this film, he's been in a lot of these kinds of films, plays main character Max. Caitlin Scheel, who would end up being in a lot of these films. She's one of these actors who pops up and like, oh, that's her. She's very recognized, very distinct look, very recognizable. Jess Wexler, Kevin Corrigan again. So you get a lot of the same people in a lot of the same kinds of films, but it's one of these things where if you're not a fan of the style or this type of film, then it could come off as annoying. It could come off as tedious. So you kind of have to, yeah. If you're interested at all in these, sort of have to. But if you're interested at all in these, and it's hit or miss for you, then you really kind of need to, I would say, analyze more what kind of filmmakers you really like, because you're going to get a more consistent kind of flavor that way, if that makes sense, um, because some of Joe Swanberg's films, I think I like to a certain extent, but I'm not quite as attracted to them, and I haven't seen all of his work, so I guess I can't really say. But then compared to Andrew Bujalski or Bob Byington, which the majority of their films I like. I mean, I think I've liked all of Andrew Bujalski's films. I like all of Bob Byington's films because they are in that sphere of these indie kind of comedies at that time, but they're doing their own thing, which I think makes it distinctly their own. Even much more than something like the Duplass Brothers, who I think have that, but their films, think like the Puffy Chair, Hump Day, Jeff Who Lives at Home. I mean, these three films alone feel very low key and very with a lot of the same qualities kind of in them, very self contemplative, self reflexive, but are not the same film. They're not the same style of film, but they still have that kind of thread running through them that makes it their own, but distinctly different, if that makes sense. So but yeah, no, it's an interesting kind of period to look at. Like I said, I mean, I was watching these films in part for inspiration and part out of curiosity. I was kind of going through a lot of them. There's still some I need to see. I was trying to watch the Dodecapentathlon and I wasn't able to. Medicine for Melancholy, the Barry Jenkins film, 2008, which actually has a Criterion. Frownland, which I'd like to watch, which I think kind of falls into that as well. I think so. At least from what I hear, that was one that was coming up on a lot of lists. But yeah, it's a fascinating array of films. Um, just general kind of recommendations, at least from this episode. Puffy Chair. I'd recommend Tiny Furniture and Francis Ha. I don't think either of those films are great, but I think they're both interesting. Um, Andrew Bujalski's work. I've talked about his work a bunch on the show, but I guess Results is one that I guess I could talk about more. But at least for the time being, I just bring it up. And I also just now realized that I meant to talk about Richard Pryor on this episode, and I just completely forgot about it until now. I have no notes this episode. I'm sitting on the floor, in fully clothed. I'm not naked, thankfully. That's not an image you probably want in your head, but not even in my pajamas. I meant to say, really. So I should probably go change into my pajamas and get in a more kind of focused state rather than sitting here on the floor looking at that one shelf that is off kilter that will have to be changed. Um, but I don't know where the drill bit is, so that's going to be a problem. But these are problems that don't pertain to you, the listener. But you're still listening, so God bless you for that. But let's just wrap it up here. This is a rambling kind of episode. All these damn films, man. There's so much to watch. So take some notes, write them down, check them out. Good stuff. Very inspirational. Don't need $1 million to make a movie. All you need is get a camera, get a script, get actors. You're good, man. You don't have any of that. Get a piece of paper, draw it out, man. Make an animated film. There's no excuse not to do it if you want to do it. We're at such a point in time now where it's so accessible to make the kind of art that you want to that you can't make excuses for yourself. Dudes like Jason Becker can't even move and he's still making music. That's insane in a positive way. So in a good way, I should say. So yeah, man, just go out there, just don't talk about it. Go ahead and do it, man. Because you're gonna be wondering why you haven't, gotten that novel written or that film made or this or that. You're gonna be talking about that for the rest of your life, and then you're gonna be in your deathbed going, "Man, I wish I had that time to write that novel, make that film." And it's like, brother, you had all that time, man. Don't waste it. It ain't worth it, man. But life is so beautiful. Life's so beautiful to enjoy. So enjoy it, live it up. God bless you, man. Trying to think of any last minute things I got to say. I always feel like I'm rushing at the end of the episode, but that's all I got, man. So hey, man, you guys take care. You have a good one. Stay warm if you're in a cold area. Wear your jackets. Make sure you're wearing your mittens, your socks, man. Make sure you have good shoes on. Defrost your car if it's outside overnight. Don't be driving like a maniac on the ice. It ain't worth it, man. You'll get to where you gotta get to. Don't rush, man. You want to get there in one piece, man. It's all good. So all right, God bless you guys. Thank you so much for listening.